On Spotlight this week, it's documentary maker and broadcaster Maia Dunphy. Here with me now, she's the endlessly talented Maia Dunphy. Not only is she a podcaster, she's a documentary maker, she's a broadcaster, radio host, writer. I mean, I could just go on. Maia, welcome to Spotlight.
Jack of all trades, eh? Isn't it so
Dick
funny?
Van Dyke.
I know.
I
I can't dance as well though. Better English accent than Dick Van Dyke, let's be honest. But I have to say, and you know this too, as a freelancer in Ireland, sometimes you have to do an awful lot of things, you know.
Of course you do.
And it's funny because in the UK, if you have to kind of sort of tailor your CV accordingly, because if you do too many things, they go, are you just not good at one thing? Like, why do you do all these things? And in the UK, you tend to be more pigeonholed that it's a one niche, thing because it's just a much bigger market. But I do feel like here, you have to do a lot more to keep everything afloat.
You do. It is what it is. You have to be a jack of all trades. Yeah. But actually, you mentioned London there. So let's start because your beautiful son, Tom, he's 10 years old, nearly.
He is, yeah. He was born in London.
Born in London. And if we're revisiting London 10 years ago, I mean, the leap that you made to come back to Ireland, you know, was quite significant. So what was it like back then? You know, being pregnant, living in London. You said to me earlier, before we even started the cameras rolling, there was lots of lovely opportunities. So you moved back home.
I know. See, I hadn't moved to London for the opportunities, which is, for someone working in TV and media, you would think, right, the next step is London. I had moved because I'd been married for a few years. We still didn't live together. I newly pregnant, got pregnant, I say unexpectedly. I was 39, but it happened very quickly. And my husband said, well, you know, we can't keep living apart. What are you going to do? So I moved to London. But I had this, I don't know, I found the pregnancy very, not difficult, just a bit overwhelming because I didn't.
They are.
Yeah. And it wasn't something, I assumed that I would be trying for months and months and months and you get your head around it. And it happened so quickly. I was still working. I feel quite sorry for me back then because I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't read any books. I had just moved to London. I had very few friends because people kept saying to me, oh, come for drinks, come here. And I was newly pregnant, didn't want to tell anybody.
Yeah, right.
And I'd convinced myself that this pregnancy won't go past 12 weeks because nobody gets pregnant the first time. I'd convinced myself of that, which is awful. So I just kept to myself. Now, my sister was there. I had a very good friend, Amanda, there. So I saw a little bit of them and they both knew, but I just kept to myself. And then I was offered to, I think shows like Loose Women, a few daytime shows, which had amazing opportunities. Yeah. But I just felt like I wanted to just keep to myself.
The cocoon.
Until I got my head around it.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that I'd moved to London, I was still working over here. I was doing 2 documentaries back to back that I had to finish. So I was flying back and forth. Like I flew back to London at nearly 8.5 months pregnant. You're not even supposed to fly at that point.
Supposed to fly, yeah. I was just like, I was definitely, I wasn't allowed to fly past, I think it was about 4 or 5 months. Well, my condition was slightly different, but yeah, no, that's brave.
I mean, the truth is that the reason you're not supposed to fly is in case you go into labour on a plane. It's not because flying is dangerous for pregnant women, but and I didn't look 8.5 months pregnant. And then suddenly I was back in London thinking there's a baby arriving in a couple of weeks, and I didn't even know my neighbourhood. It was quite lonely, to be honest. My mum came over. She said she was going to come for 2 weeks. She stayed for 6 weeks. And I would have been lost without her.
Well, you had a very busy life. I mean, your marriage to Johnny Vegas and, you know, what was happening there where, you know, you as you said, you had a hybrid life between, you know, Ireland and then, of course, him working as a comedian and, of course, host everything. I mean, he wears many hats too over there. But then the jump to move back to Ireland, that must have been tricky too.
The truth is, I never really moved lock, stock to London.
Right.
That's the reality of it. And I don't know whether psychologically I just wanted to make sure I had a safety net, which, you know, maybe there's a bit of an element of truth to that. But, you know, I have, and thank God, I bought an apartment here years ago and I didn't sell it. If I had sold it, I'd be probably living in my dad's spare room now. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah. But I was back and forth all the time. And because I didn't take the opportunities in London, I kept the opportunities going here. So I was back and forth. I mean, this is not terribly good for the environment, but Tom was on 100 flights before he was 4.
What?
I know. He's aviation mad now. He wants to be an aeronautical engineer, so maybe there's some connection. My dad had said to me after about 3 years, he went, how many flights has Tom taken? I said, I don't know. He goes, well, go into your Ryanair Lingus account and count them up. I said, Dad, my dad's a numbers man. He goes, well, I'll do it then. So yeah, he did 100 flights before he was 4.
My goodness me, that's
so that will tell you that I wasn't really. And the sad thing is, I'm still in the WhatsApp group for the girls on the road where we lived in London. And I feel like now between the two, like they're back and forth with them. And I'm actually going to London in August and I'm going to meet them all for drinks. And they're so lovely. And I feel like I never really let myself settle. And if you don't work in a place and you don't make friends in a place, then you're kind of
nomadically,
really a visitor. Yeah,
you're kind of flying around. I mean, like, there's so many things that you've done over the years. I mean, with Boom to Maternity, Merlot and Me, What Women Want. Let's focus on, of course, your career in broadcasting, because I mean, it's been fantastic, the work that you've put out there. Documentary maker is what I would put on your hat, on your head, if we were talking about your living and how you make your living. I mean, what was it about documentary making, other than making dramas or making comedy, that drew you to that?
Well, I think the thing is, I mean, I absolutely love comedy, and I worked with the Podge and Raj boys for years.
Yeah.
But that was very much kind of contributing to somebody else's sense of humour, which was also my sense of humour. We had so much fun. So much fun.
So fun.
And I kind of forget sometimes, people say, oh yeah, we saw your name in this credit and this credit. And I forgot about some of the stuff that I've written over the years, and things like someone said to me, oh, your name is in the Mr. Tato book. Oh, I forgot about the Mr. Tato book. All the stuff that I've done when I had so much more free time. But I had started writing a column for the newspaper, and I had written a piece about, I always tried to deal with kind of topics that were close to my heart that might have been slightly more serious, but to deal with them in a lighthearted way. And I've always felt like that's the way to get people to open up, because life is funny, and life, even when you're going through the difficult times, there's always a laugh to be had. So that's what I tried to do. And then RT had said to me, would you make a documentary based on this column you've written? And I said, well, I'll write it for someone else. And they said, no, it's got to be an authored piece.
Oh, nice.
So I did it, and I was terrified, but nobody died, and not everybody hated me.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a great way to get across a message. And I think sometimes people say, oh, well, they're not about me, but I do wear my heart on my sleeve. And I think sometimes if you're sitting with somebody who has gone through, addiction or difficulty with conceiving or relationship problems or anything like that, if you share a little bit of yourself, then they open back up to you. I think everyone has some context in their lives for these things. That's what I always try to do. So you're giving people a platform to open up, where I think if you're on current affairs show and you're saying, so tell us about your horrific fall into addiction. Yeah. Whereas if you put people,
there's no personability with that.
So I ended up making 12 documentaries, and I didn't, so I had two 4-part series. Then I had the Merlot and Me was kind of the first one.
I love that.
That everybody watched. And again, it wasn't finger wagging. That's the thing. I was saying, look, I'm probably guilty of drinking a bit too much.
It was funny when it first came out, because I was like, wow, I mean, this is really innovative. This is really dynamic. The pool that you took from, which is the sacred pool of, do we drink too much? What's your relationship with alcohol? Yeah. How do you drink? What's your the drinking culture, I suppose, of Ireland, and what we're so renowned for? But breaking that down, it was absolutely fascinating, because I resonated with it. Anyone I knew, it was a big kind of water cooler talking point. How did you find the reaction of that?
It was almost universally positive, which is very unusual. Very unusual. Yeah. Things I've done since then have been less positive, and I think now that would have been 12 years ago, and social media has changed so much in the last 12 years, and people feel they can say a lot more than they used to back then, I feel. And the thing is, I can't believe it's 12 years actually. But now there's been a lot more. They go by in
a blink, don't they? Yeah.
I know. There's a lot more, because there are more platforms now for that style of storytelling and story sharing. There's a lot more. People talk about women and alcohol. I was doing things like, the cosmetic surgery conversations kind of before they were in the mainstream, and going along to people and looking at what was being done. People were still keeping it quite quiet. Now these things are all in the mainstream, but then different things now interest me as well.
I mean, there's the Ozempic and the Mounjaros.
Exactly.
People saying, I don't want to admit that I've done it or taken it, when actually there's loads of other people then, of course, have taken it for health issues, and rightly so. But that will all change too. Like when I was doing those shows, nobody would admit to Botox. Nobody would admit to getting lip fillers, these things that they obviously had, but nobody would admit to it. And now they are, but now there's something else that we're being shamed for, And if
if these Ozempic, are they GLP drugs are called, if they help people, you know, I think, I don't know, people are shamed for everything. I mean,
it's a shaming culture in Ireland, though, for sure. You know, and that's what you've tapped into, and that's what I was going to say, even about, like, you know, what women want. You've tapped into that shame, and isn't it awful that we still feel that way? I mean, I'm 47. I just turned 47, and I do. I feel sometimes in meditations and Reiki and different things, I'm like, I feel ashamed for all the things that I've done, and I think they're not even that bad.
I know.
Why do we beat ourselves up over stuff?
Well, it's certainly. I think it certainly comes from the outside, and I think, and I always said, I think it's really important that women are allowed to. We see women getting older on telly and in media, and we don't all have to. When I made that documentary years ago, they said age 0 is 38. That's what it was at the time.
Age 0 is 38.
Yeah, so that's the age that the younger women want to look 38 because they look, you know, because sometimes women are also judged for being too young, you don't have enough experience. But 38 apparently was known as age 0. So the women who are older want to come back to that. Women who are younger want to, which is so ludicrous, because we should be allowed to be whatever age we are. And I think when you think about aging was more linear in, say, our grandparents' era, where even you dressed a certain way after you got married and had a baby. If you were widowed, you dressed a certain way. You know, you got your hair cut after you had a baby because it just saved you time. And now, you know, we're still wearing the style of clothes, or certainly I am, that I would have worn when I was 25.
Absolutely.
I mean, not all of them, thank God.
No, I know. And the 90s is all revisited. I should have kept a lot of stuff for my godchildren. But you're so right. And I think even about my father's mother, you know, my grandmother Hannah, and she had my father, would we say, later in life. And actually, when I did the maths, I think she had him at 43, 44. And I thought to myself, that's not that old.
Yeah.
I'm 47. I had Saren at 45, you know. And luckily, luckily I had her at 45. But I'm just saying, I think, you know, we're conditioned, you know, to act a certain way, be a certain way. And what you've done is you've kind of smashed that mold and opened that up in terms of being a documentary maker, and also in your podcasting as well. So do you find that things are changing, though, even in the Irish media landscape? Do you think people are more accepting?
I'll tell you what I think is key. And sometimes people talk about gender quotas and gender balance and people roll their eyes. But I really do believe that it's important for more women to be at the helm. You know, because, you know, because it's like society is 50-50, and so should the workplace. And I can see it. I can see it in events that I MC and things that I'm involved with. And when women come in, now, of course, there are exceptions. Every time I say, they go, Margaret Thatcher. I go, stop throwing Margaret Thatcher in my face. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't like Margaret Thatcher.
No.
She's the exception. But I do think in general, Margaret Thatcher aside, I think when more women are, and women who have children, women who don't have children, women who understand what other women go through, it does change the landscape. I do think you must see that as well.
I do, and I think I'm trying to cast my mind back, because obviously this is a podcast, so you know we're chit chatting away about everything and anything. And I think sadly the last time I've seen you has been many moons ago. I think we were at the IFTAs, and I was discussing that I was having difficulty conceiving, and there was lots of other problems going on. I suppose I wouldn't share everything with anybody, but you were so understanding. You were so warm. I remember we exchanged numbers even that night, and even my husband Richard said, God, she's lovely. You know, it's like you do have the right sense, the goods, to be able to talk to somebody openly and honestly. And I felt that with even what we were exchanging, which was about children and maybe their lack of, and my disappointment with it. But you get it, Maia, I think, you know, and that's
very
why
kind thing to say.
Well, you do, though. You get it. And we weren't speaking on a podcast. We were just speaking after on a busy table in an award ceremony that I don't think neither of us even cared to be there. But it was that sense of, you know, you connect with people, and that's why you're good at what you do. I mean, you've got columns, you know, written for the Indo, you've written for Image as well. You know, will there be ever a time where you feel there's nothing left to say, or do we always have to keep challenging ourselves?
But there's always something to say. And with every phase of life, things change, your opinions change. And what I've really felt is how your ambitions change. And sometimes I think, especially for women, it's seen as something of a failure. And it's not that you've lost your ambition, it's that your ambition has changed. I think that happens with every decade of life, but also when you have children.
Oh, God,
and the simple fact is...
now that I have her, things have changed, yeah.
And, you know, when you have a child, you know, and I'm separated, so obviously, you know, I'm a single parent now, which I hadn't planned for. But still, the majority of childcare, I see it in my friends who are very happily married, still falls to women, in my experience, a lot of the time. So it's very hard to not bring that to, you know, and you don't want to be bringing your problems to work. But I think it's really important that women can be honest and frank and say, I mean, for a long time, I would never tell someone if I had a childcare issue, because I thought, I don't want to be the person they go, don't ask Maia, because she has childcare issues. So I would just say that I was really busy. And I feel sorry now that I did that, because I've always felt that it takes for women to stand up for other women and say, if you want something done, ask a busy woman, ask a busy mum. They will get it done.
Of course we do.
Before breakfast.
We're definitely, I think of, I feel I am sometimes anyway, the ilk of, there's no problems, there's only solutions.
Yeah.
Now, do I fully believe that? I don't know, but I do my best. But we always seem to get it done in the end, no matter how crazy nuts everything
absolutely.
can be. Yeah.
But when I think about the documentaries, they were great fun and I enjoyed them. But I used to work 16-hour days. And there were times, I remember one particular day, and we got the chance last minute to interview the then Minister for Health. We had to be in his office at 7:30 in the morning. But it was the same day we had booked to film in a nightclub. And the nightclub were kind of securing a place for us, so we couldn't change it. So, I was up at 5:30 to stick a bit of makeup on to get into the Minister for Health's office for 7 o'clock in the morning. I didn't get home till 3 or 4 in the morning. Now
And you had Tom at that stage?
No, I didn't.
You didn't? No. Okay. Well,
so I couldn't do that now. So, and I've had some lovely opportunities come my way that I've just said, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do other things that I can work around my life the way it is now. And I think that's a really important thing to say. And I think also when you say, is there nothing left to say? Every single, like when I set the M Word blog was what I needed at the time. And it kind of shared stories with other mums who were kind of at home. And you remember that, the first 6 months, the first 6 weeks and the first 6 months of a new baby.
Oh, you have no idea what you're doing.
Like nothing
it's
else.
crazy. It's like the Wild Wild West.
It really is.
Yeah, it is.
And sometimes at that time, you just need other people to understand. And then that goes, and the new phase comes, and the next phase comes. And every time you cross one threshold and one milestone's over, something new comes up. And now my son is nearly 10. He's fantastic. He's so independent, but he still holds my hand and he still likes my company. I know that won't always be the case. But then when the next stage is here, there'll be something else to talk about, I think.
Yeah. And I always am interested, in what your next endeavour is, and what are you cultivating and curating at the moment? Or are you taking a break?
I'm doing a fair bit. Well, I can't afford to ever take a break full time. I don't think anybody can.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of development work now. Now, it's hit and miss, but it's been very good for me because, in the UK, I've done a bit of script development work, which is really exciting.
Yeah,
and a lot of the time you actually get paid for the development work, which is even better.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a little bit more of that. I would love to do more of that. And again, when you talk about women being allowed to get older and be seen to get older in the public eye and on screen, a lot of that has come from women producers and writers, like someone like Sharon Horgan and Aisling Bea.
Yeah.
Sharon Horgan, for example, has created really well-rounded female characters that hold their own on shows. So they're not the sidekicks, they're not the girlfriend, they're not the hassled mum. They are front and center. And so for so many years, in comedy especially, and comedy dramas, women weren't fully rounded because they were all written by men. So that's starting to change too. I wouldn't have that level of talent, but I'm practicing.
Stop it. But we need more. We do, of course, Sharon, and as you mentioned, Aisling as well, but we do need more comedy, females on screen. We always talk about it, but like absolutely fabulous. And, you've your Dawn French and you've your Jennifer Saunders, that's pure comedy gold. But there needs to be more, and especially Irish women on screen as well. I don't see enough.
Yeah.
I don't see enough.
For 30 years, it was French and Saunders were the only female comics anybody could mention. And that's completely changing now. But we need to see more women on the bill, more women on panel shows, more women on, and it's funny because it still kind of seeps in that people said, I remember doing an idea for a panel show, said, oh no, we already have a woman on that show. And I said, what do you mean?
But you're not a token. You're not a
Not me. I was trying to get somebody else and I was producing.
The women aren't tokens, and I find that very offensive.
Yeah, and that's starting to change. But again, I think it's come from having more women producing and writing and at the top.
But it's lovely to hear that because, I've been an executive producer and a producer for years, and obviously like you, broadcaster, a bit of a jack of all trades. And it's funny because people think, oh, I didn't know you did all that. And it's like, but sure, why wouldn't I?
Yeah, and I have to.
And I have to because I need to make sure that I'm over the work, that I know that I can stand behind the work, that I know my subject matter, whether it's film, which is my big wheelhouse, or it's whatever it needs to be, politics or sport or whatever. Although sport I don't know too much about, but it's like you have to be on top of everything. So why wouldn't you be the broadcaster and the producer at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. I was the production accountant on all of my documentaries because I was there all the I do love a spreadsheet. And I was the one
love an Excel spreadsheet.
I do, but I was the one who was on. I was the only person at every single shoot, so I knew like where the last euro had gone on sandwiches. And people assumed a lot of money in tech. There was not a lot of money in the independent sector in documentary making, I can tell you. But I remember going into finance guy in RT at the end of production with all my notes. And he said, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm the accountant on this. So here we go. Because you had to go in and go through everything to get the last 10% of the...
Is that to do with your dad
budget.
as well? You mentioned your dad's into numbers. Is that the reason?
Well, yeah, that's how I was raised. I
Okay.
know where every last cent goes.
Good for you. I'm getting you to do the budget on this podcast.
Well, I was, if you hen night parties, the bill comes, just give it to my guy. Right, okay, give me the bill. Give me the bill.
Brilliant. Now, you've been very busy as well. Talk me through your experience in Borneo, orangutan.
That's a long time
I know
ago
it's a long
now.
time ago, but it's just, you do a lot of charity work, and I know you're very invested, but there's lots of different facets to you, and I just love to touch on that slightly because that's really fascinating.
The charity, well, the wildlife stuff has always been there. I mean, I'm
Not a lot of people know that about you.
No,
really.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I hosted Zoo Live on RT last year, and again, it was quite serendipitous because I was approached by the show. Zoo Live is it's a live show filmed from Dublin Zoo.
That's right. I watched it.
They asked people to be like a celebrity keeper for the day. And they asked me to do that. And then somebody had gone on maternity leave. Somebody else had left. And I remember thinking, I wonder, should I send an email? Are they looking for someone to host? Well, no, I won't do that. And then they got in touch and said, we were just wondering if you would like to co-host the show with Anna Daly. And I was in my element.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Anna would be the safe pair of hands for live studio work. So I did a tiny bit of that, but then I was doing all the stuff that was pre-recorded around the zoo, like getting my hands very dirty with Red River hogs and snakes and...
But you're an
looking
animal
things
lover
out.
because, as we mentioned, Borneo, the orangutans. Where did it all start?
Well, I went with my best pal Alice we went for 2 months to volunteer and we stayed for nearly a year. So we set up a project. I wanted to help and I said, look, we could sweep shite and clean for a year,
Yeah.
but that's not going to help long term. What can we do that's practical? And they said, see that building there? That was built by the government to be an information exhibition centre, but no one's had the time to do anything with it. So we stayed and we built them a permanent exhibition for people visiting.
Would you bring Tom back? That's amazing. That is, I'd love to do something like that. Would you bring Tom on some of these expeditions or some of these?
That was that was over 20 years ago now, but I've been back twice since.
It's nice to revisit, right?
Yeah, but I've been back over there twice. But it's about as far away as you can go because there's no direct flights to Borneo. And funny enough, I got an email from one of the guys who used to be the head vet there, and he said, "When are you coming back over and bringing Tom?" That was only yesterday. He messaged me.
There you go.
I keep saying yes.
I've opened it up to the universe.
Yeah, I mean, Tom is my travel buddy. We do a lot of travel together. Not that far, but we will eventually. And then that got me involved with. So I would have been very anti-zoo before I went over there, and then I came back and I realised, oh my goodness, what we need is really good zoos, and Dublin Zoo is incredibly progressive. It's world class. So I've been involved with them as well. My dad then became president of Dublin Zoo. So
this I did not know.
I know, yes. I know, from the corporate world to, my dad's a brilliant man. So yeah, he was president of Dublin Zoo. So we're quite involved there as well. And then other charity work, that's a good thing about, building a profile, the things that you get to do. Because there are times when I think, and I'm sure everyone has these little crises where I think, why didn't I do something more worthwhile? Like, why haven't I done something more worthwhile? And then you realise that it's a great privilege to be able to, I'm an ambassador for the hospice and I work with the Irish Cancer Society too, Marie Keating Foundation. Like I lost my mum to cancer 3 years ago. And to be able to lend your voice and your platform to those charities is an amazing opportunity. And I think in some ways then I go, okay, well then maybe rather than, doing hands-on social work, I do a lot of volunteering locally as well.
My God, you've put me to shame now. Talk about Irish shame, like, oh my God, look what Maya's doing and you're so busy.
Yeah. No, but it's a great privilege to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm very involved with the hospice and they are an incredible group of people. And I think once you have my mum didn't pass away in the hospice, my granny did, but once you have set foot in there, you see what they do. And I think then you're sort of kind of connected for life to them.
Well, you see, I would see you as a very safe pair of hands if there was a documentary that was to come on about, I don't know, nursing homes or those heart issues. And, I feel like you would be excellent in the health domain in terms of, pushing some buttons to find out other questions. But now having talked to you about natural history, would that be something that would have interested you as well? I mean, we have obviously our David Attenborough's and he's wonderful. I mean, one of my best friend's husbands is the executive producer in the Blue Planet series, but I'm now thinking of you for something like that.
Oh, don't. I would have loved that. He lived near us in London and his house doesn't have a big driveway. It's just a small gate and a little path up to the door. Yeah. And I used to walk past all the time and then stop and tie my shoe. And then fixed Tom's buggy, was hoping he might come out, and he never did. He never did. No, I would love that. It's funny. I don't think anybody has ever seen me in that light until the Zoo Live last year. I mean, I'll be honest, before Tom was born, I pitched hundreds of ideas to RT and they were saying, what is this crazy idea? And I looked back at my folder from the last few years. Oh my God, there's so much stuff in it. And I don't do that so much anymore. But
natural history would be. I mean, not only because we need more females leading that charge for sure, and I don't see enough of them. And I know we've one or two in BBC, Irish BBC. But sorry, what's her name?
Liz Bonnen.
Liz Bonnen. Sorry. Okay, 3, 2, 1. And I feel like we need more females leading the charge, and we have Liz Bonnen. Obviously, I've seen some of her documentaries, and they are
she's incredible,
fascinating. And I know she's built her career in the UK, but definitely, I think there needs to be more. There can always be more. There's always more room, and we need that. So maybe that's another endeavour to look at.
Yeah, it's a funny thing with wildlife because we're so used to seeing the really big budget BBC shows. And we don't have the budget for those. But I love the, Ken O'Sullivan's work around the oceans, things like that. So we can do, and now that we have, you can film things a little bit cheaper. But what we forget is we have so much incredible wildlife on our own doorstep. And you don't always need the massive expeditions to Antarctica. You just need to go to the west of Ireland.
I know now who is definitely part of your, 6 people for dinner guest list. So I presume David Attenborough's on that. When you pick your living or dead people for your dinner party, would he be on them, especially if you've been tying your shoes?
I don't know. I'd have him in the kitchen maybe. He could serve.
Let's open that little question. Who would be your 6?
Oh no, I can't. I don't know. I'd have all puppets. I'd have a few of the Muppets, Zig and Zag, Podge and Raj, and then we just all eat super noodles.
Oh,
yeah, and then wipe it off our fur.
I'm
actually serious.
Are you serious? I've mad ones. I've John Lennon, and I've all sorts of people in there. But definitely David Attenborough. I love natural history.
Do you know what's awful? Every time we see his name trending, everyone panics
because he think he's going to die.
Oh, Jesus, no.
He's dead.
I know.
God, yeah. Well, I hope by the time this goes out, he's still alive. We love you, David. Yeah. We love you.
What's great about him is he has changed his opinion. All the time he changes his opinion, and he's talked about eating less meat and trying to drink less alcohol for the planet. I mean, he's very progressive for a man of 99 years of age, but...
He's amazing. Obviously we need to talk about your beautiful son, Tom. You introduce him across your socials and across everything in life. There's never a time I've ever not talked to you where you don't include him. He's a beautiful boy. What's life like now? He's moving now into his double digits.
I know.
Because when we last spoke, he was your young boy. So how is that changing? Moving in motherhood, it's so fast, isn't it?
It is. I'm such a cliche. And my dad keeps saying to me, he goes, he said, your mum and I said, we never thought you'd take to it quite like this, because people always say to me, oh, well, you never wanted kids. I never actively didn't want kids. Yeah. I just wasn't one of those people who had a definite plan, and other things always took priority. And then when he came along, I didn't know what to do for the first while. And it is now without doubt, just, he is the highlight of my life. And he is, I'm very lucky. He's really, now he's a worry because he's a highly sensitive little boy, which, brings its own concerns. But he is just lovely. He's empathetic, he's sweet, he's kind. And when people say things like, oh, do you never need a break? And I go, I actually don't ever want a break from him. And I'm very aware that this time is finite, and that this time will come when he doesn't want to hang out with me. So we do an awful lot together. And
well, he's your best friend.
He is my best friend, my best little pal. He's great. And that's a big part of ambitions shifting as well, that I don't want to be out for 12 hours a day, 5 days a week working. I want to spend time with him. And how you obviously tackle relationships, whether that's a new one or just even with your friends or with your family. I mean, it all circumnavigates around your child. I feel that too. Yeah, absolutely. No, he's my absolute priority, and it's such a privilege. It's just great. I want to freeze him now. I want to freeze him at 9 or 10 and go, that's it.
That's it. But of course they're going to move on, and there's all of that to come. Are you nervous of what happens in motherhood in terms of hormones? And, I know my friends are dealing with it at the moment, like school discos and, I wouldn't say temper tantrums, but, the junior cert, all those younger, the younger tweens, they're finding it tricky. They said it's the hardest part. And I was like, really? I thought toddlers were the worst. And that's where I am,
But the funny thing is, I think it's a bit like, can feel quite abstract. Like sometimes when you're pregnant and you imagine holding a baby, you can't imagine it because you haven't met that little person yet. And when I see kind of teenage boys messing around on the dart, things like that, I go, oh my God, and the smell of them, and Jesus, lads. But, you know, for each of their parents, they knew them as a baby, as a toddler, as a 6-year-old, as a 9-year-old. So all that is part and parcel of who they are as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, and a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old and all that. Like Tom keeps working out how old I will be when he's certain ages, and it's getting very depressing. He goes, Mummy said, when I'm 40, will you still be alive? And I'm please, oh God, I hope so.
Oh, well, there's all that, isn't it? There's all the worry of your own sense of self and your own health and everything. I've just come with another idea. We're going to have to wrap it up, sadly, but I was just thinking you could be like the Richard Linklater of, you know, timelines. Maybe that's your next pitch, you know, going from birth to, you know, the whole story, the trajectory, the arc of children's lives. I think you would just digest that so beautifully in a documentary for all of us to
I would spend the whole time crying. I would spend what I did actually, I pitched a documentary idea about 4 years ago to try and find like what is the alternative to raising kids with religion. And because there's great things coming from Scandinavia, as always, about how to teach compassion and empathy without religion.
Oh, that's a good one.
But Tom then discovered religion himself, and I got a lot of flack for it. He did communion last year because he wanted to. I gave him the choice, and we had a lovely day. There were no bouncy castles. It was just, we had the church and then we all went for pizza. It was fine. Nice. But then this year he said to me, because he has his geological timeline on the wall in his bedroom, and he went, I'm not doing confirmation. I've given it a go. He said, I can't reconcile it with the timeline. I was like, okay, that's fine. So we can't reconcile it with science. So it was a brief
science head.
It was a brief dalliance with the church, but we still go in and we light our candles and.
Yeah, indeed, of course, because there's people to light candles for, as always. Maia, it's been an absolute pleasure. You won't believe it. Our time is up already. I know, it's so fast. But what's next for you? Because that's the one thing I would love to know. I mean, we've talked about maybe you doing this or doing that. Where's your heart lying? What would you love to move on next?
I do love the writing. I'm going to be sticking with the writing and development work. I do have a couple of little things that will be coming up on RT in the next year, I hope, that I'm involved with.
Great.
They haven't been announced yet, but it's nice to keep a hand in.
Absolutely.
So there's a tiny bit of telly, there's hopefully a little bit of radio, and lots more writing.
Oh, I love it. It's absolutely. And listen, your work is just so enjoyable. You know, it's honest, it's candid, and to me anyway, you've always spoke volumes and championed women no matter where you go. So thank you for always being so truthful. I think it's very important to have a truthful female on our side that just flies the flag for all of us. So
as do you. Thank you for having me.
Not at all, Maia, an absolute pleasure. And I can't wait to see what you do next.